The meteor storm arrived without warning, sweeping over the frontier colony of Leiden Ridge like a river of burning metal. Elias Venn had been halfway through repairing the roof antenna when the sky turned white, and every alarm in his cabin began screaming at once. His weather console announced in its calm synthetic voice that there was a minor atmospheric disturbance, which Elias considered an impressive way of describing several thousand incandescent stones trying to murder the landscape. He climbed down, sealed the shutters, and waited for the bombardment to pass. Then, beneath the thunder, he heard something different, a long metallic shriek followed by a distant impact deep in the northern forest. Elias had spent 12 years as a rescue pilot, which meant curiosity had long ago become a professional disease. He pulled on his old pressure coat, activated a palm-sized survey drone, and headed into the trees. Rain hissed against scorched branches. The drone floated beside him, projecting a blue navigation line through the darkness while repeatedly advising him to return home. "You've become very brave since I removed your warranty," Elias told it. The drone responded by displaying a red warning symbol that looked suspiciously offended. The crash site lay in a shallow ravine 2 kilometers from the colony boundary. At first, Elias mistook the wreckage for a meteor fragment. Then the smoke shifted, revealing a narrow vessel half buried in the earth. Its hull was pale silver, smooth as water, with no visible seams. Symbols moved across its surface like living ink. This was not colonial technology. It was not human technology at all. A hatch had opened beneath the broken wing. Elias approached slowly, his rescue scanner trembling in his hand as it tried and failed to identify the ship's radiation signature. Inside, dim amber lights pulsed along curved walls. The air smelled of ozone, burned fabric, and something sweet that reminded him of winter flowers. He found the woman first. She lay trapped beneath a fractured support frame, one arm wrapped protectively around a small child. Both appeared almost human. The woman had pale skin, silver blonde hair darkened with blood, and long, elegant ears that curved through the tangled strands. Her armor was cracked across the chest, its surface flickering with dying geometric patterns. The little girl beside her had the same long ears and bright gray eyes. She stared at Elias without blinking. "It's all right," he said softly. "I'm here to help." The child tightened her grip on her mother. Elias crouched and activated his translator. The device produced a burst of static, then declared in a cheerful voice, "I am here to improve your soup." He closed his eyes for a moment. "Excellent. First contact, and I'm apparently a chef." The girl's expression did not change, but one of her ears twitched. Using a portable gravitic jack, Elias lifted the support frame from the woman's body. Her pulse was weak and strangely irregular, beating in paired rhythms. His scanner warned him that her blood carried metallic particles unknown to its database. It also suggested contacting emergency services. That would have been the lawful choice. Colonial authorities would send security officers, quarantine the ship, separate the child from her mother, and lock both survivors inside a military laboratory until someone important decided whether they were people or property. Elias had seen that kind of caution before. "No," he muttered. "Not tonight." He wrapped the woman in a thermal field and carried her from the wreck. The little girl followed so closely that she nearly stepped on his boots. His drone hovered near her face, scanning her vital signs. She slapped it away with surprising accuracy. "I've wanted to do that for years," Elias said. The drone displayed another offended symbol. By the time they reached the cabin, the storm had begun to fade. Elias converted his workshop into a medical room, pushing aside engine parts and half-built machines. His old regeneration cradle complained that the patient's biology was unsupported, incompatible, and possibly imaginary. Elias bypassed 3 safety locks and ordered it to try anyway. The cradle unfolded around the alien woman, filling with pale, healing mist. Medical nanites entered her bloodstream, then immediately retreated as though they had changed their minds. "That's encouraging," Elias whispered. The child stood beside the machine, soaked, exhausted, and silent. Elias found a blanket and placed it around her shoulders. She did not resist, but she never looked away from her mother. Hours passed. The regeneration cradle finally stabilized the woman's heartbeat, though its display warned that full recovery could take weeks. Elias sat on the floor with his back against the wall. The child remained beside the cradle, one small hand pressed against its transparent cover. "You should sleep," Elias told her. She looked at him. The translator crackled and spoke in a distorted voice. "Mother does not wake." Elias felt something tighten in his chest. "Not yet." The girl's eyes filled with fear, but she refused to cry. Elias leaned forward, careful not to move too quickly. "She is alive. I'll keep her alive. And I'll keep you safe too." The translator paused, processing his words with all the urgency of an elderly accountant. Then it announced, "I will preserve your mother and prevent you from becoming soup." For the first time, the little girl made a sound. It was small and breathless, almost a laugh. Elias smiled despite himself. Close enough. Outside, the last meteors burned across the sky. Inside the crowded workshop, beneath the glow of alien armor and malfunctioning medical lights, a frightened child slowly sat beside a human stranger. Neither of them understood how far their lives had already begun to change. The first morning after the crash felt strangely peaceful, which Elias Venn considered suspicious. In his experience, whenever the universe became quiet, it was usually preparing something expensive to break. His cabin's artificial sunrise system slowly brightened the windows, painting the walls with a soft golden glow, while the damaged alien vessel outside continued to hum like a machine that was trying very hard not to admit it was dying. Elias woke up sitting on the workshop floor with a thermal blanket wrapped around his shoulders. At some point during the night, he had fallen asleep beside the alien medical chamber. He looked at the equipment around him and sighed. His workshop had once been organized. Now half of it belonged to alien technology, a quarter belonged to emergency repairs, and the remaining space belonged to a small alien child who had silently moved his tools into a neat line according to some unknown logic. The little girl sat beside the window watching the forest outside. Her long ears moved slightly whenever a sound came from the trees. She looked almost human, but those elegant ears, the unusual patterns in her eyes, and the strange silver markings on her damaged clothing reminded Elias that she came from a world far beyond Earth. "You know," Elias said while standing up, "most people who break into my house at night at least bring something useful. Food, money, a better coffee machine." The girl turned toward him. The translator on Elias's wrist activated. "Human requests improved beverage equipment." Elias stared at the device. "That is not what I said." The translator flashed. "Correction. Human requests emotional beverage support." He looked at it suspiciously. "You're getting worse." The child watched the argument between him and the translator with obvious confusion. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. It was the first real expression he had seen from her. Elias smiled. "Good. You're allowed to laugh. I'm told it makes humans seem less terrifying." The girl tilted her head. The translator spoke. "Human admits possible terrifying nature." "I did not say that." "Human confirms." Elias pointed at the device. "We're going to have a serious conversation about your translation skills." For a moment, the cabin felt less like a shelter and more like a home. But the peaceful feeling disappeared when the medical chamber suddenly released a warning signal. Elias immediately rushed toward it. The alien woman inside moved slightly, her heartbeat changing rapidly. The chamber displayed dozens of unknown symbols. His old rescue instincts returned instantly. "Come on," he whispered. "You survived a crash, a meteor storm, and my medical equipment. Don't give up now." The little girl ran beside him, fear returning to her face. Elias placed his hand against the chamber. "She's still here." The child looked at him. "She's fighting." The girl slowly placed her small hand beside his. For several minutes they stood together without speaking. Then the medical system made a strange noise. A tiny mechanical arm extended from the chamber, and dropped a small container onto the floor. Elias picked it up. "What is this?" The translator scanned it. "Emergency nutritional paste." He opened the container and looked at the gray substance inside. "I survived military missions, asteroid storms, and 3 years of colony food shortages. But this thing might actually defeat me." The little girl looked at the paste. Then she looked at Elias. Then she covered her mouth. She was laughing. Not loudly, not freely, but enough. Elias pretended to be offended. "I see. My suffering is entertainment now," the translator responded. "Small alien confirms human food sadness. I'm being insulted by a machine and a child before breakfast." The girl continued laughing, and Elias realized something important. She had been afraid since the moment he found her. Every sound, every movement, every unfamiliar object had reminded her that she was lost. But now, even for a few seconds, she had forgotten. That mattered. Over the next several days, Elias worked to understand the alien technology hidden inside the crashed ship. The vessel contained advanced systems far beyond anything humans possessed. Its navigation core could calculate star routes instantly. Its materials could repair themselves using microscopic machines. Its energy source was a compact quantum reactor that seemed to bend physics instead of obeying it. Unfortunately, none of that helped him repair his broken kitchen. "The most advanced spacecraft in the galaxy," Elias said while looking at the alien control panel, "and somehow I still cannot make breakfast." The translator responded, "Human defeated by food preparation. I'm beginning to think you enjoy this." The child watched him struggle with the kitchen system and quietly stepped forward. She touched several symbols on the alien interface. The machine immediately activated. A small robotic arm appeared and prepared a perfectly balanced meal. Elias stared. "You knew how to use it?" The girl nodded. "You could have helped me yesterday?" Another nod. He placed a hand over his chest dramatically. "I have been fighting alien technology while the smallest person in the room knew the answer the entire time." The translator spoke. "Human has discovered humility. I liked you better when you were broken." The little girl laughed again. As the days passed, the distance between them slowly disappeared. Elias learned small details about her. She understood machines better than most adults. She loved looking at Earth's sky. She was fascinated by ordinary things humans ignored, like rain, birds, and handwritten notes. In return, Elias taught her about his world. He showed her old photographs of Earth cities, explained human traditions, and even introduced her to his collection of outdated music devices. She seemed especially interested in a small wooden instrument he kept from his childhood. When she touched it carefully, Elias realized something. She was not just waiting for her mother to wake up anymore. She was beginning to feel safe. Outside, deep in the forest, hidden fragments of the alien ship continued sending weak signals into space. Elias did not know that someone was listening. He only knew that every morning, a little alien girl sat at his table, watched him burn breakfast, and smiled when he complained about it. And somehow, after years of living alone among the stars, his quiet cabin no longer felt empty. 3 weeks had passed since the meteor storm changed Elias Ven's quiet life into something he no longer recognized. Before the crash, his biggest daily problem had been repairing old machines and convincing his stubborn farm drone that trees were not enemies. Now he was caring for an alien child, repairing a spacecraft built with technology that seemed to ignore several laws of physics, and secretly hoping the authorities would not notice that his home had become the most interesting place on the entire frontier. The strangest part was that Elias had grown used to it. Every morning, the little alien girl sat at the kitchen table, watching him prepare breakfast with the same serious expression an engineer might have while analyzing a dangerous weapon. Her long ears moved slightly whenever he made a mistake, which happened often enough that Elias suspected she had developed a special ability to predict disasters. "You know," Elias said one morning while staring at the strange device she had attached to his coffee machine, "when I found you, I thought I was rescuing you." The girl looked at him. Now I think you rescued me from having a normal life." The translator processed his words. "Human accepts becoming unusual." Elias looked at the device. "That is not even close." The translator flashed. "Human accepts becoming strange. Somehow worse." The girl smiled. That smile had become something Elias secretly waited for every day. The alien child had changed more than he expected. When he first found her, she barely spoke. Every sound made her nervous. Every unfamiliar object seemed dangerous. Now she walked through the cabin as if she had always lived there. She knew which floorboards made noise, which machines needed gentle treatment, and most importantly, which drawer contained Elias's emergency chocolate supply. He discovered that last detail when he found her standing beside the open drawer. She looked at him. He looked at her. The chocolate bar in her hand disappeared behind her back. "Interesting," Elias said. "The advanced alien civilization can build ships that travel between stars, but apparently they have also mastered stealing snacks." The translator spoke. "Child denies criminal activity." She didn't say anything. "Child's silence is suspicious." Elias laughed. "Finally, something we agree on." Despite the humor, Elias never forgot why they were there. The alien woman remained inside the regeneration chamber, slowly healing. Her condition improved each day, but her recovery was complicated. Her body used biological systems completely different from humans, and the medical equipment struggled to understand her. The alien technology inside her ship helped. The damaged vessel contained medical archives, scientific records, and countless machines that Elias could barely understand. He spent hours studying them, hoping to find a way to wake her faster. One evening, while repairing the ship's navigation core, Elias discovered something unusual. A small section of the communication system was still active. The signal was weak, but it was transmitting. Elias froze. He studied the readings carefully. The ship had been damaged, but one emergency beacon had survived. It was sending a repeating message toward deep space. Someone was looking for them. He quickly disabled the transmission. The little girl noticed his expression. The translator struggled to explain the situation in simple words. "Unknown visitors may arrive." Her face changed instantly. The happiness disappeared. Elias regretted letting fear show on his face. "Hey," he said softly. "Don't worry. We don't know who is coming." The girl looked toward her mother's chamber. "She will wake up," Elias continued, "and when she does, we will figure everything out." The child stared at him for a long moment. Then she asked something through the translator. "Why help us?" The question surprised him. Elias looked around the cabin, at the damaged machines, at the alien technology, at the small child who had lost everything familiar. He thought about giving a simple answer, because it was the right thing to do, because anyone would help. But he knew life was rarely that simple. "I spent a lot of years flying rescue missions," he said. "I learned something. The universe is huge, bigger than anyone can imagine. There are billions of planets and trillions of lives." He looked at her. "But when someone is standing right in front of you and needs help, suddenly the universe doesn't feel so big anymore." The girl listened carefully. The translator took a moment. Then it spoke. "Human says small people are important." Elias smiled. "That is a surprisingly good translation." The girl looked down, thinking about his words. Then she slowly reached out and touched his hand. It was a small gesture. But Elias understood. She trusted him. Later that night, Elias sat outside the cabin beneath the alien stars. The frontier sky was filled with unfamiliar colors, distant planets, and glowing particles drifting through the atmosphere. He wondered where the little girl came from. What kind of world had created her technology? What dangers had forced her and her mother to flee? Inside the cabin, the alien ship quietly repaired itself. 1,000 tiny machines moved through its damaged structure, rebuilding circuits and restoring systems that should have been impossible to fix. Then, Deep within the vessel, a hidden screen activated. A message appeared. The signal had been detected. Coordinates confirmed. The search had begun. Far beyond the frontier colony, another ship changed direction and began traveling toward Lyden Ridge. Elias knew nothing about it. For now, he only watched the stars and listened to the quiet sound of the cabin behind him. A cabin that no longer belonged only to him. The morning the alien woman finally opened her eyes, Elias Venn was arguing with a machine that had no understanding of human frustration. The problem was simple. The alien medical chamber had spent 3 weeks repairing itself, analyzing unknown biology, and performing calculations beyond anything Elias could understand. It could stabilize a damaged alien body, regenerate complex tissues, and communicate with a spacecraft thousands of light years away, but it could not make a cup of coffee. "Explain something to me," Elias said while standing in front of the alien kitchen system. "You can manipulate quantum energy, but you cannot understand the concept of breakfast?" The machine responded with a series of soft electronic sounds. The translator on his wrist activated. "Human requires emotional liquid." Elias stared at it. "That is actually close." The little alien girl sitting at the table watched the conversation with great interest. Over the past few weeks, she had learned that humans sometimes talk to machines as if they were stubborn family members. She had also learned that Elias often lost arguments with objects that could not argue back. The girl tilted her head. The translator spoke. "Human is defeated by kitchen device." "I am not defeated," Elias replied. "I am negotiating." The translator paused. "Human loses negotiation." The girl covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. Elias pointed at the device. "You are teaching her disrespect." The translator answered immediately. "Human already provides examples." He sighed. "I regret repairing you." Before the girl could laugh again, the medical chamber suddenly released a deep warning tone. Everything changed. The smile disappeared from the child's face. She jumped from her chair and rushed toward the chamber. Elias moved quickly behind her. Inside the transparent field, the alien woman's body shifted slightly. Her long ears twitched. Her silver blonde hair moved gently in the medical mist. The wounds that had once threatened her life had almost disappeared, but her body was still recovering from the crash. The chamber displayed a new message. Consciousness returning. Elias felt a strange mixture of relief and nervousness. For 3 weeks he had taken care of the child. He had protected her, fed her, taught her, and watched her slowly trust him. But now her mother was coming back, and Elias suddenly wondered what she would think. Would she see him as a protector, a stranger, a threat? The chamber opened slowly. The alien woman took a deep breath. Her eyes opened. For several seconds she only stared at the ceiling. Then her gaze moved. She saw the unfamiliar room. She saw the damaged alien technology. She saw Elias. And finally, she saw her daughter. The little girl froze. Then she moved. She ran forward. The alien woman tried to sit up, but her body was still weak. The child reached her and wrapped her arms around her mother carefully. The woman closed her eyes. A sound escaped her. Not pain, not fear, relief. Elias stepped back quietly, giving them space. The translator struggled as the alien woman spoke in her own language. "Where are we?" The device attempted to translate. "Location unknown. Human residence. Possible strange cave." Elias looked at the translator. "Residence." The device flashed. "Correction, human nest." "I am starting to understand why nobody likes this thing." The woman looked at him with confusion. Elias raised his hands. "Sorry, the translator is still learning." The woman studied him carefully. She noticed the medical equipment, the repaired parts of her ship, the food containers beside her daughter, and most importantly, she noticed how naturally her child stood beside him. Her expression changed. She asked another question. The translator spoke. "Why does my daughter trust you?" Elias did not answer immediately. He looked at the child. She was holding a small wooden instrument he had given her several days earlier. A simple human object she had treated like a priceless artifact. "I found you both after the crash," Elias said. "You were badly injured." She was scared. "I just did what anyone should have done." The woman looked at him silently. The translator continued. "Human claims ordinary behavior." Elias smiled slightly. "That part is accurate." The alien woman slowly tried to stand. Her legs shook, and Elias moved forward instinctively to help. But he stopped himself. He waited. She looked at his hand. Then she accepted it. The moment lasted only a second, but Elias noticed something. For the first time since waking up, she was not looking at him with suspicion. She was looking at him with gratitude. Later that day, the woman learned everything that happened while she was unconscious. Her daughter showed her the cabin, the machines, and the small collection of human objects Elias had introduced. She proudly demonstrated how to operate the kitchen system. The machine immediately prepared food. Elias crossed his arms. Unbelievable. She wakes up and suddenly the machine respects her. The translator spoke. "Machine recognizes superior intelligence." Elias looked at the child. "She is replacing me." The girl smiled. The alien woman watched them both. And for the first time she understood something she had never expected. Her daughter had not simply survived on this strange planet. She had found happiness. That night, while Elias repaired the final systems of the alien ship, the woman stood near the doorway watching him. She had traveled across the stars. She had escaped enemies. She had survived a disaster. But the greatest mystery before her was not the human technology or the strange planet. It was the simple truth that her daughter had looked at a human stranger and found safety. And somehow that was the most impossible thing she had ever witnessed. The days after the alien woman awakened were filled with a strange kind of peace that Elias Venn had almost forgotten existed. His cabin, once a quiet place where he repaired machines and occasionally argued with his own tools, had transformed into something completely different. It was still a workshop. There were still engines scattered across tables, cables hanging from the ceiling, and unfinished inventions sitting in corners. But now there were also alien devices floating through the rooms, a small child laughing while chasing maintenance drones, and a recovering alien woman trying to understand why humans considered burned food a normal part of daily life. Elias watched the little girl attempt to explain a human game using a translator that still had serious problems. "Translation error," the device announced. The girl pointed toward a small flying drone. "Friend." The translator corrected itself. "Tiny flying enemy." Elias looked at the drone. The drone immediately moved behind his shoulder. "I think the machine has decided it agrees." The alien woman, who had been studying the conversation, allowed herself a small smile. It was the first time Elias saw her laugh. Her name was Lyra. The translator had struggled with the exact pronunciation, producing several completely different versions before finally settling on the closest match. Elias had accidentally called her Lyra, Lyra, and once Laura, before the device corrected him. The look she gave him after Laura had been enough to make him apologize immediately. "I blame the translator," Elias said. The translator responded, "Human accepts responsibility." Elias frowned. "I did not." "Human accepts responsibility emotionally." Lyra covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. "You know," Elias said, pointing at the translator, "your people built faster than light technology, but somehow their language system is the most dangerous invention here." Lyra looked at the device. Then she nodded seriously. Elias smiled. "Finally, someone understands me." As Lyra recovered, she became more involved in repairing her damaged ship. The vessel remained partially buried near the cabin, protected by a camouflage field that made it almost invisible to passing sensors. Inside, thousands of microscopic repair machines rebuilt damaged circuits and restored systems that should have taken decades to recreate. Elias was fascinated every time he entered. The ship did not feel built. It felt grown. The walls reacted to movement. The lights adjusted themselves according to emotion and temperature. Even the control panels changed shape depending on who touched them. When Elias placed his hand on one interface, it transformed into a simple human-style screen. When Lyra touched it, the entire room filled with complex holographic maps. Elias stared. "That is insulting." Lyra looked at him. "It respects you. It gives me the easy version." The translator spoke. "Human receives child mode." Elias looked at the ceiling. "Even the spaceship thinks I need supervision." The little girl laughed loudly. That laugh had become something precious to him. But beneath the peaceful days, Elias knew something was coming. The signal from the ship remained his biggest concern. Someone had been searching for them, and eventually someone would arrive. One evening, while examining the ship's communication system, Lyra discovered something that changed everything. A hidden message was stored inside the damaged navigation core. It was encrypted, not a distress signal, a warning. Lyra's expression became serious as she translated the message through the ship. Elias noticed immediately. "What is it?" She hesitated. "My enemies." The room became quiet. Elias looked at her. "Who are they?" Lyra touched the holographic display. A symbol appeared in the air. A military organization from a distant region of space. A group that had been hunting scientists and researchers who possessed dangerous technology. Lyra had not simply been traveling, she had been escaping. Elias looked at the child playing nearby. "And now they know where you are?" Lyra lowered her eyes. "Not yet. But they will." The weight of those words filled the room. Then the little girl walked over carrying a broken toy drone. She looked at Elias, then at Lyra. Then she handed the drone to him. Elias blinked. "Now?" The girl nodded. "You want me to fix this?" Another nod. He looked at the serious alien woman beside him, then at the broken toy. "Well, apparently the fate of the galaxy can wait. Someone has a damaged flying object." Lyra looked confused. "This is important?" Elias examined the toy. "Very important." "Why?" "Because she asked." Lyra became silent. The answer seemed simple, almost too simple, but she understood. For Elias, helping someone was not about importance, power, or reward. It was simply what he did. He repaired the toy carefully, replacing a small damaged component with a piece from an old machine in his workshop. When the drone activated again, the little girl smiled proudly. Lyra watched the scene. She had lived among powerful civilizations. She had met leaders who commanded fleets and scientists who could reshape planets. But she had never seen someone treat a small broken toy with the same seriousness as repairing a starship. That night, she stood outside with Elias beneath the alien sky. "You are different," she said. The translator struggled. "Human is unusual." Elias laughed softly. "I'm choosing to believe that was a compliment." Lyra looked toward the stars. "Where I come from, people are measured by their abilities." She looked back at him. "You measure people by what they do for others." Elias did not answer. He simply looked at the stars. For the first time in many years, he no longer felt like he was standing alone beneath them. But far beyond the frontier colony, a massive alien vessel changed course. Its scanners had finally found the missing ship. And aboard that vessel, someone looked at the recovered coordinates of Lyden Ridge. The search was over. The journey had begun. The first sign that they were no longer alone came from the sky. Elias Venn was outside the cabin repairing one of the alien ship's damaged energy collectors when his old human communication tower suddenly activated. The machine had not worked properly in years. In fact, Elias had once considered using it as a very expensive decoration because it had spent more time complaining about errors than actually transmitting signals. The tower lights flashed. Elias looked up. "That is not good." The small maintenance drone beside him rotated. "Human identifies problem." Excellent observation. Human still has not solved problem. Thank you for your emotional support. The drone displayed a happy symbol. Elias sighed. Somehow even the machines had developed personalities around him. Inside the cabin, Lyra immediately sensed something was wrong. The alien technology within her ship reacted before any human system could detect it. The walls changed color. The navigation core activated. Holographic displays appeared across the room, showing a distant object approaching from deep space. The little girl ran toward the display. Her excitement disappeared when she saw her mother's expression. Lyra stood completely still. They found us. Elias looked at the approaching vessel. It was enormous. A silver structure many times larger than the colony's largest station moved silently through space. Its engines created waves of distorted light as it entered the planet's atmosphere. The little girl moved closer to Elias. He noticed. Without thinking, he placed a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. Lyra looked at him. You do not know who they are. No. You do not know what they want. No. You do not know if they are dangerous. Elias looked back at the approaching ship. That is a lot of things I don't know. The translator activated. Human admits ignorance. Elias pointed at it. Not helping. Lyra almost smiled. Almost. Even in the middle of fear, she had learned that Elias had a strange ability. He could make impossible situations feel slightly less terrifying. The alien vessel landed several kilometers from the cabin. A group of armored figures emerged. They were not soldiers. They were scientists, engineers, and medical specialists from Lyra's civilization. Their armor was advanced, but their movements showed caution rather than aggression. The leader introduced herself through the translator. Commander Saren, we have come to retrieve Dr. Lyra and her child. Elias noticed something. They did not say capture. They did not say contain. They said retrieve. That mattered. Lyra stepped forward. You followed the emergency signal? Yes. And the others? The commander's expression changed. The threat has been contained. Lyra relaxed slightly. Elias watched the exchange carefully. There were thousands of questions he wanted to ask, but one seemed more important. What happens now? The commander looked at him. The translator processed. Human caretaker identified. Elias raised an eyebrow. Caretaker? The translator changed. Temporary parent substitute. The room became silent. The little girl immediately grabbed Elias's hand. Elias froze. Lyra noticed. So did everyone else. The commander studied the child's reaction. She has bonded with you. Elias looked uncomfortable. I just helped her. Lyra looked at him. You did much more than that. For the next several hours, the alien team examined the damaged ship and prepared it for departure. Elias watched them repair systems he had spent weeks trying to understand. Their technology was far beyond his own. But every time he saw something amazing, he remembered something. They were still just people. People who worried. People who loved. People who were afraid of losing someone. One of the alien engineers approached him while examining his repairs. The alien looked at the patched sections of the ship. You repaired quantum stabilizers with primitive equipment. Elias nodded. Yeah. The engineer looked confused. Why? Because they were broken. The engineer stared. That is not a scientific explanation. Elias shrugged. It usually works for me. The engineer looked at the repaired system again, then quietly said, Your methods are extremely inefficient. Elias smiled. Thank you. That was not praise. It sounded close. The engineer walked away, clearly confused by humans. As evening approached, the departure preparations began. The little girl became quieter. Elias noticed immediately. She no longer explored the ship. She no longer chased drones. She simply sat beside the window, watching the stars. He sat beside her. Going home is supposed to be a happy thing. She looked at him. The translator spoke. Home is where mother is. Elias nodded. Then the translator continued. Also where human is. Elias stopped. The child looked away shyly. He felt something heavy in his chest. Lyra had been watching from a distance. She heard the translation. And for the first time she understood the depth of what had happened. Her daughter had lost her home. Then a stranger had given her a new one. Not a planet, not a building. A feeling. That night, Lyra found Elias outside the cabin. You will miss her. Elias looked toward the window where the child slept. Yes. Lyra was quiet. She will miss you too. Elias smiled sadly. I hope she remembers me. Lyra looked at him. I do not think you understand children. What do you mean? They do not remember people because of names or titles. She glanced toward the cabin. They remember how someone made them feel. Elias looked at the stars. A few days ago he had been alone. Now he was preparing to say goodbye to a family he never expected to have. The alien ship waited above the colony. The journey home was ready. But none of them knew that the hardest moment was still ahead. Because saying goodbye was easy when people were strangers. It was much harder when they had become family. The morning of departure arrived too quickly. Elias Venn had spent years believing that time moved slowly on the frontier. Days were long, nights were quiet, and most problems could be solved with enough patience, enough spare parts, or enough stubbornness. But he had discovered something during the past few weeks. Time moved differently when you had someone you cared about. The alien ship hovered above the landing field, its silver surface reflecting the light of Lyden Ridge's sun. The repaired engines created waves of shimmering energy around the vessel, making the air look like it was bending around invisible rivers. Elias stood beside the ship with his hands in his pockets. He had repaired spacecraft. He had survived meteor storms. He had faced unknown technology. Yet somehow, saying goodbye to a child felt like the hardest mission he had ever attempted. The little alien girl stood beside Lyra wearing a small jacket Elias had made from human fabric and modified with alien materials. It was not perfect. One sleeve was slightly longer than the other, and the color-changing fabric occasionally turned bright orange for no reason. Elias had tried to fix that. The jacket refused. Apparently, even clothing from another planet had opinions. The girl looked down at the glowing sleeve. The translator activated. Human clothing has chosen happiness. Elias looked at the jacket. Of course it has. Lyra smiled. You created something that even your machines cannot control. That happens more often than I would like. The little girl stepped closer to him. She had changed so much. When Elias first found her, she had been afraid of every sound. She had hidden from every unfamiliar face. She had looked at the universe like it was a place that only wanted to take things away from her. Now she stood among strangers without fear. She asked questions. She laughed. She explored. And Elias realized something that surprised him. He had not only saved her, she had saved him too. Before the crash, his cabin had been nothing more than a place where he existed. A collection of walls, machines, and memories from a life he rarely talked about. He had convinced himself that being alone was easier, less risk, less pain. But the universe had sent him a child from another world, and somehow she had reminded him that loneliness was not the same as peace. Lyra approached him. The translator remained quiet for several seconds before speaking. She wishes to thank you. Elias looked at her. She does not need to. Lyra shook her head. She does. The alien woman looked toward her daughter. For 3 weeks I was unconscious. I could not protect her, I could not comfort her. I could not even tell her that everything would be okay. Her voice became softer. You did all of that. Elias looked away. I just did what anyone should do. Lyra smiled slightly. That is what makes you unusual. The translator spoke. Human is unusually ordinary. Elias laughed. That is probably the nicest thing you have ever said. The translator processed. Correction. Human remains confusing. Never mind. The alien engineers completed the final checks. The ship's quantum reactor awakened, creating a gentle vibration beneath their feet. It was time. The little girl walked toward the entrance. Then she stopped. Elias knew immediately. She turned around. For a moment, nobody moved. Then she ran. She crossed the landing field faster than anyone expected and threw herself into Elias's arms. The entire alien delegation became silent. The little girl hugged him tightly. The translator activated. "Dad." The word echoed through the quiet field. Elias froze. Lyra froze. Even the commander standing nearby seemed unable to process what she had heard. The little girl looked up at him. "Dad." This time she said it without the translator. Her own voice. Her own choice. Elias felt his eyes become heavy. He had never expected that word. He had never asked for it. But somehow hearing it meant more than anything he had ever accomplished. Lyra stood several steps away. She looked surprised. Not angry. Not hurt. Just overwhelmed. Because she understood. Her daughter was not replacing her. She was not forgetting where she came from. She was simply carrying one more person in her heart. Lyra slowly walked forward. She placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "Our people have searched the galaxy for centuries looking for new civilizations." She looked at her daughter. "But perhaps the greatest discovery is realizing family can appear where we least expect it." Elias smiled. "So does this mean I get invited to visit?" The little girl immediately nodded. Lyra laughed softly. "Yes." The translator activated. "Human will experience advanced alien culture." Elias looked nervous. "That sounds dangerous." The translator continued. "Human will probably embarrass himself." "I knew it." The little girl laughed again. The sound followed them as they boarded the ship. Before departure, Elias looked back at his cabin. The place where he had lived alone for years. The place where he had believed nothing would ever change. Now it looked smaller. Not because it mattered less. Because his world had become much larger. The ship lifted from the ground, rising through the atmosphere and toward the endless stars. Below, Lyden Ridge disappeared into the distance. Above, an entire galaxy waited. Elias stood beside the little girl and Lyra as the ship traveled toward a world he had never seen. A human from a small frontier colony. An alien scientist who had crossed the universe searching for safety. And a child who had unknowingly connected two worlds. 3 lives that had begun as strangers. 3 lives that had become family. And somewhere among the endless stars a new story was beginning.